So, good afternoon, class. In the last video, I have explained to you about the disasters, the natural disasters, man-made disasters, which include the industrial and technological disasters and also the Bhopal gas tragedy. So, in today's video, I will explain to you about Chernobyl nuclear disaster. This nuclear disaster occurred at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which was one of the largest power plants in the Ukrainian Republic of erstwhile USSR on April 26, 1986. It is the worst nuclear disaster recorded in a nuclear power plant. This nuclear power plant had 4 reactors of 1000 megawatt each for electricity generation. A sudden power surge resulted in 2 explosions which destroyed the reactor core and blasted a large hole in the roof of the reactor building. So what is thermal or this nuclear power plant? So this nuclear power plant is mainly a thermal power station which uses a nuclear reactor as a heat source, and it is typically used to generate electricity. So this Chernobyl nuclear power plant is one of the largest power plant in the Ukrainian Republic of USSR. And this Chernobyl nuclear disaster is said to be one of the worst nuclear disasters recorded in a nuclear power plant. So this nuclear power plant had 4 reactors of 1000 megawatt each for electricity generation. So it is a huge nuclear power plant. A sudden power surge resulted in 2 explosions. So this explosion, it was caused due to the sudden surge of power during the reactor system test, and which results in explosion which destroyed the reactor core and blasted a large hole in the roof of the reactor building. Now the radioactive debris or these waste of these radioactive elements move up through that hole to a height of 1 kilometer. Approximately 100 to 150 million curies of radiation escape into the atmosphere, which is very high. To reduce emission, the rescue team bombarded the reactor with 5,000 metric tons of shielding material consisting of lead, boron, sand, and clay. Soviet officials placed the toll of human lives to 31. So this radioactive isotopes escaped into the atmosphere. So in order to reduce this emission of these radioactive elements, the rescue team have tried to destroy the radioactive isotopes by using lead, boron, sand, and clay. And it was said that this disaster has taken the life of 31 people. However, according to Western estimates, 2,000 people were killed. Large areas of the Ukrainian Byelorussian Republic of the USSR and even parts of Poland, Denmark, and Sweden were contaminated. So this emission of these radioactive isotopes, it has also affected Poland, Denmark, and Sweden. Around 200,000 people had to be evacuated and resettled. They have to move and settle down in another place. And there is also an after effect after these disasters which lasted for many years. And there was an increase in the number of people who are affected with blood cancer, thyroid, skin diseases, hair loss, nausea, anemia, respiratory and reproductive diseases. So the cause of these diseases is because of the radiation which have emitted from these radioactive isotopes. Now oil spills. An oil spill is a release of a liquid petroleum hydrocarbon into the environment, especially marine areas, due to human activity, and is a form of pollution. So oil spill here is the release or the leakage of a liquid petroleum into the water, into the ocean, or in the coastal areas or coastal waters, and it also sometimes may occur on land. So it occurs due to human activity and is one of the form of pollution. Oil spills may be due to releases of crude oil from tankers, offshore platforms, drilling rigs and wells, as well as spills of refined petroleum products and their byproducts, heavier fuels used by large ships such as bunker fuel, or the spill of any oily refuse or waste oil. So it is due to the release of these oil from the tankers, or the leakage of these oil from the tankers, those big tankers, or the pipelines, or these drilling stations, or the wells which is used to drill for drilling petroleum, and also the byproducts. Oil spills penetrate into the structure of the plumage of birds and the fur of animals, reducing its insulating ability and making them more vulnerable to temperature fluctuations and much less buoyant. So this oil spills of this oil, when it penetrates or when it gets absorbed into the skin or the feathers of these birds and the fur of these mammals, it reduces its insulating ability. So we all know that in animals, they have that insulating layer of fat under the skin, and this is very important especially for the marine animals, because of the cold water, in order to prevent them losing the heat due to the cold air. So this oil spills, when it penetrates into the skin or into the feathers or into the fur, it reduces their ability to make their body warm, and also make them more vulnerable to temperature fluctuations and make them less buoyant in the water. It also reduces their ability to float in the water. Clean up and recovery from an oil spill is difficult and depends on many factors, including the type of oil spill, the temperature of the water, and the types of shorelines and beaches involved. Spills may take weeks, months, or even years to clean up. Now, it is very difficult to clean up the oil that is spilled in the water or in the ocean or in the coastal areas or even on land. It also includes the type of oil spill, the temperature of the water, and the type of shorelines involved. And it may take months and years to clean up these oil spills. So oil spills can have disastrous consequences for society, economically, environmentally, and socially. As a result, oil spill accidents have initiated intense media attention and political uproar, bringing many together in a political struggle concerning government response to oil spills and what actions can best prevent them from happening. So this oil spills, it also have an impact on the economy, on the environment, and on the society as well. So oil spills have drawn the attention of the media and therefore is creating a huge political uproar, bringing many together in a political struggle, asking the government to take responsibility and to take up the measures and actions to prevent these oil spills from happening. Now, the 10 largest oil spills in the US. The following table lists the largest oil spills in US history, the date of the spill, circumstances surrounding the spill, and amount of oil spilled are also given. So this table, it shows the date, the cause, the source, the location, and the spill volume. So the latest one here, it is given, that is on April 20, 2010. However, last year also, that is on 2020, there was this leakage of this pipeline gasoline in the United States, which have also affected the marine life and also the ecosystem. So you can read this table on your own about the cause, the source, the location, and how much oil spill is being spilled into the ocean or in the water or in the coastal areas. Now let us have look at the role of the government. So the government is playing an important role in managing a disaster. The government of India set up the NDMA, or the National Disaster Management Authority, for the purpose of disaster management. Now, this NDMA, as the apex body, is mandated to lay down the policy, plans, and guidelines for disaster management to ensure timely and effective response to disasters. Now, this National Disaster Management Authority has laid down certain rules and regulations, policies or projects, plans and guidelines which needs to be followed in order to be able to provide help and assistance to the public when there is a disaster. Now, towards this, it has the following responsibilities. Lay down policies on disaster management. Now, the NDMA has laid down certain policies on disaster management, which will concentrate on prevention, mitigation, preparedness, rehabilitation, the reconstruction, and also to formulate appropriate policies and guidelines for effective and synergized national disaster response and relief. And it will coordinate the enforcement and implementation of policies and plans. Approve the national plan. It has to also approve the disaster plans which has been set up by the national government or the central government. Approve plans prepared by the ministries of departments of this government of India in accordance with the national plan. It also has to approve these plans set up by the ministries of departments of the government of India in accordance with the national plan. Lay down guidelines to be followed by the state authorities in drawing of the state plan. Now, these guidelines involve planning, organizing, coordinating, and implementing policies and plans in a holistic, community-based, participatory, inclusive, and sustainable manner. So this national plan is to build a safer and disaster-resilient India by developing a holistic, proactive, multi-disaster and technology-driven strategy for disaster management. Now, the state government also set up, or it also has the authority to set up certain policies in order to help the people during a disaster. Now, this NDMA therefore has also laid down the guidelines which needs to be followed by the state authorities. Lay down guidelines to be followed by the different ministries or departments of the government of India for the purpose of integrating the measures for prevention of disasters or the mitigation of its effect in their development plans and project. So this NDMA will have, as I have said, need to concentrate on prevention of how to prevent when there is a disaster, how to prepare for a disasters, and what are the things or the measures that they need to follow after a disaster, or how to minimize the cause of a harm from a disaster. Coordinate the enforcement and implementation of the policy and plans for disaster management. So the NDMA will coordinate the enforcement and implementation of these policies and plans. Recommend provision of funds for the purpose of mitigation. So this NDMA need to collect or to store up some funds in order to use it during a disasters. So these funds is used for the purpose of mitigation. Now, mitigation here, it means reducing the risk of loss from the occurrence of any undesirable event or a disaster, to minimize the degree of any loss or harm. So these funds, they are used for the purpose of minimizing the degree of any loss or harm which can occur due to any disaster. Provide such support to other countries affected by major disasters, such may be determined by the central government. So several countries also used to give support in terms of money or in terms of rescue team when there is a disaster in any other particular country. So it is the responsibility of the NDMA to provide such support to other countries which needed help and support when there is any major disaster. And it has to be determined by the central government. Take such measures for the prevention of disaster or the mitigation or preparedness and capacity building for dealing with threatening disaster situations or disaster as it may consider necessary. So this NDMA, it has to also take other measures as how to prevent a disaster or how to minimize the degree of harm or loss, how to prepare when there is a disaster, and how to build up after a disaster. So it is a premier institute for training and capacity development programs for managing natural disaster in India on a national as well as a regional basis. Now lay down broad policies and guidelines for the functional of the National Institute of Disaster Management. So as I have said here, that the NDMA laid down broad policies and guidelines for the functioning of the National Institute of Disaster Management. Now this National Institute of Disaster Management, it is an institute which gives training and capacity development programs as how to manage natural disasters in India or in any particular region or in the whole world. So with this, the role of the government as how to manage a disaster, we have come to an end of this chapter, that is man-made and natural and man-made disasters. So if you are having any doubt, please let me know. Thank you.